Welcome to Creating Disney Magic with Lee Cockrell. Lessons in leadership, management, and customer service. You can create magic too. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and as you would expect, I'm here with Lee Cockrell. How you doing, Lee?
Hey, Jody, good. All good in Florida today.
That's great. Lee, I have a big announcement.
Oh, all right.
I have launched my own podcast, The Jody Mayberry Show.
Oh, good. It's about time. Good for you. Yeah, that's great.
And I had a very special guest for episode 3. You were on the show.
Yeah, well, that was a good recording, and I hope people enjoy it. We had fun doing that, and more and more I'm seeing this is quite the way to communicate with people. I think every business out there, the head of the business, ought to be having either using ones like this or yours or doing their own so the people working for them can hear their voice and hear the emotion. So, yeah, it's great. Good for you.
Yes, well, podcasting connects people in a way that nothing else can, in my opinion. And I just decided it was time to start my own. I had the Park Leaders Show, and I do your show with you, and I thought, well, it's just time to have my own show. And I guess I'm not as creative or didn't have a creative enough title as Creating Disney Magic, so I just named it after myself. And if you would like to check it out, you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or at jodymayberry.com. So, Lee, let's get down to business. We got my show out of the way. I had a listener question that I thought was so fun that I set aside everything else and said, I've got to hear Lee's answer to this. So this comes from Stephanie Hickman, and she said she's been listening to the podcast ever since she heard you on WDW Radio, thinks that this is a great show. So thank you for that, Stephanie. As a teacher, Stephanie said that she's continually trying to become a better teacher and have been trying to apply some of your principles into her daily routines. Well, that made her curious, Lee. She wants to know if she were to have you be her substitute teacher for a day in her middle school language arts class, how would you apply your business principles to managing a class of 30 adolescents?
Is that middle school, she said? What is that,
Yes.
7th and 8th grade kind of thing, I guess?
I believe so. I should know that, but my kids aren't there yet, so I guess I don't know what middle school actually is.
Well, I think managing kids that are 7 and 8 years old and up through either 9, 10, 11, and 12 is challenging. And I think the one thing in school that we found out a lot is that so often the curriculum is very boring. And when you're bored, even my grandkids would get in trouble occasionally because they'd bring a book to read because they'd be in some kind of class and it was so boring they'd get their book out and start reading and the teacher would get all over them. But you've got to really work hard to make it interesting. I know my grandkids go to a school where you take history and you're assigned a part in the history. So if you're doing the Civil War, some of the kids in the room are Confederate soldiers, some are Union soldiers, some are reporters, some are different jobs, different ranks, and they learn the material by storytelling, which is they take a part in it and they play it out. And they tell me they really remember what they learn when they have the interest of having a part in the story and part of the curriculum. And so I certainly would do that. And I've talked to middle school kids and I've in many schools and high school kids, and teacher could bring somebody in from the outside occasionally to talk to them because, if you see the same person every day, you kind of get used to it. And it's kind of like your mother. Nobody listens to their mother and they don't listen to their teachers. But I always tell people to listen to their grandparents and maybe an outsider that's got an interesting story to tell and interesting way to present the material, and you're not so close to it. So, and I think you got to have fun. It's got to be fun. It's got to be, you got to get those kids up out of the seats. Your teacher's got to really work hard to make sure she's getting every one of them participating, even if she has to check off the name every day for the whole week to make sure that she called on every single person. They've got to know that they've got to be ready. Yeah, it's just, it's like anything. If we like something, it's fun, we're learning something, we're being respected by the person trying to teach us, we like it more. And I think a lot of teachers are burned out. A lot of times the administration doesn't give them enough latitude to do the things they should be able to do to make it more fun and more interesting. I had a teacher write me the other day from California, and she said, would you consider coming out here to work with us? She said, we're in desperate need of somebody in some leadership out here in our school systems. And, boy, that's sad when you hear that. They're kind of depressed and can't do a lot of things. And then the parents are a problem too. But, we all have that favorite teacher. And usually it's that teacher that was found new ways to do things. And so I would think about that and really make it exciting, and don't be just like every other teacher. Find some ways to bring a lot of interest into it. So that's what I think about education. It's got to be fun. You got to do it through storytelling. You got to really involve everybody. Nobody can sit back and sleep in the back of the room. They've got to know they got to be on their toes. And if it's interesting, they won't be sleeping. And if it's interesting, they will be doing their reading before they get to class. And just another leadership issue. You got to take charge and figure it out. So, and maybe ask the students how you can make the class more interesting too. Or let the students be an assistant teacher for the day, up with the teacher, doing some section of the. I mean, it's like every problem in life. You got to sit down and think about, okay, this is not working. How can we do it a little different? And not keep doing it the same way. So hope that's helpful. And I'll think about that some more too, because that's one of the most critical places in our society right now is teachers. If we don't get great teachers where the students want to learn, we're doomed. So I always tell people teachers and nurses are my two favorite people in the world. They're the ones that are really making a difference. So yeah, there you go.
You make so many good points there, Lee. When I look back to my time in school, I didn't care for school at all up until a teacher in high school just really connected with me. And it's like it opened a new world that, wow, learning isn't what I thought it was. It's actually kind of fun.
What was that movie with, what was his name? Dead Poets Society?
Oh, with Robin Williams.
Man, go watch that movie and it'll remind you how crazy he was. Standing on the desk, getting them involved, taking them outside, changing the location of the class for the day. Just fun. Just where people can't look. They don't ever know what's going to happen. You know, I always tell people, if you have everybody facing the room, have the teacher go to the back room, tell the people back there, now this is the front of the room today. So now they got to turn around and listen because people think they're going to hide the back. I do that when I give some of my speeches because it really makes the people in the back crazy because they don't want to be noticed, but they need to.
Now, one thing you may not realize about Lee, because it's not something I don't think he talks about very often, but there are times when he gives a presentation in a city. If a company will bring him in to give a talk, he will tell that company, I will give a presentation at your local school as well, and allow them to set it up, and he'll do that at no additional charge. So, Lee, that's wonderful that you do that. And it makes me wonder, when you do give presentations to schools, what types of questions do you hear from the students?
Oh, it's a lot of times they'll ask me, I talked to a middle school once and the teacher said, I told them all about my background, how I got to where I was, and I started as a waiter and I didn't have a college degree and I worked really hard. And the teacher said, what'd you learn from Mr. Cockrell's presentation today? And the little boy raised his hand. He stood up and he said, I learned today that you can be successful in America even if you're poor. I mean, that's pretty sad, you know. This was a very affluent neighborhood, and he just didn't realize that hard work and keep learning. And when he says, I now know you can be successful even if you're poor, and that's pretty cool. So, yeah.
What message, when you get in front of the kids like that, if they walk away and have learned one thing from you, what's the one thing you hope that it is?
Well, I tell them right up front that their reputation has already started. You don't wait till you're 18 or 21 to start behaving. Be careful what you say and do. Be careful what you put on Facebook. Don't do those things. I give them some good stories about people who are in jail, who are in trouble, who are getting in all kinds of trouble because the judgment of a young person is not very good, and they'll take risks. And I try to paint a picture for them that I don't want to say scares them, but reality. And my presentation style is, I want to make sure they understand they don't, no matter how smart you are, if you get in trouble with the law or in the sexual issues or all these kinds of ways, shoplifting, going in and stealing a pair of sunglasses, going online and communicating with people inappropriately, you can get in serious big trouble. And even the school my grandkids go to, they have people come in and talk about that. My granddaughter, they had somebody come in and talk about Facebook when she was about 7th grade. She took her Facebook page down and never opened it again. It scared her so much about these creeps out there in the world. So, I try to give them a dose of reality. Since I'm not at school, I can say anything I want because I leave right afterwards. So I can't get in trouble with the school board or the school system. And I also have a message for the teachers when I'm in those rooms and tell them that when I talk to teachers off, I tell them, listen, look professional. Quit coming in here looking worse than the students with your way sloppy clothes. You didn't do your hair. You didn't comb it. You look like a mess. You're role models. and you need to get your act together. And I couldn't tell the students from the teachers sometimes. So I think sometimes the administration allows that, but I mean, professional appearance sends a strong message to the students about what professionalism looks like when they get out in the workplace.
When you give a presentation in the business world, whether it's at a conference or at a business itself, people know your reputation, they know the books you've written, and people pay attention because of that, because of who you are and what you've done. When you're speaking to kids, they may not know any of that. And I mean no disrespect by this question, Lee, but how do you get their attention where they realize this is something I should listen to rather than, well, this guy's old enough to be my grandfather. What's he doing up there?
Yeah, and actually I start many of my speeches that way. I spoke to 700 high school kids one day, and they looked like, what are we doing in here in this assembly? They didn't want to be there, I could tell. And I said, I'm sure you all wonder what this old man has to teach you or say to you today. And I want to tell you, when I was your age, I was just as insecure as you are. And I had to go around acting like I was a big deal. And I didn't pay attention like I should have. And when I finish telling you my story, and I tell them, I grew up on a farm, and my mother was married 5 times, and I was adopted twice, and I dropped out of college, and I started in a waiter's job and worked my way up, and it gets quiet in the room because half the kids in that room are in the same dysfunctional family sometimes where there's drugs and alcohol and divorce and inappropriate behavior and parents not paying attention to them. And I get right into those. They've never heard anything like this. They almost faint. I mean, it's like one girl came up to me after I spoke, and she said, "Thank you so much for coming today, Mr. Cockrell," 11th grader. She said, until today, I didn't know that I could be a leader. Wow. And so I just I tell them things they've never heard before, and I just lay it out there, like Donald Trump's doing right now. Although I don't trust him. They trust me. They trust me because I come from Disney and I'm a friend of Mickey Mouse.
Well, you can't not trust somebody that's friends with Mickey Mouse.
Well, the Disney background helps a lot, I must admit, because they start to listen when this guy's here from Disney. So that doesn't hurt.
Well, I have one more comment for Stephanie, that there is a teacher's guide to the book Creating Magic. So perhaps that will give you an opportunity to bring in some of Lee's principles straight from the book into your classroom.
And if Stephanie sends me an email, I'll send her one.
Okay, there you go, Stephanie. Lee at leecockrell.com. And that goes for any teachers out there. If you would like the teacher's guide to creating magic, you can reach out to Lee and he will send it directly to you.
There you go.
And if you have a question for the show, please also reach out. You can reach me at jodymayberry.com. You can reach Lee at leecockrell.com. If you send a question to me, Lee won't know what's coming, just like today. He didn't know this question was coming from Stephanie, and I thought it was a rather fun one, which is why I bumped it up in the order. So if you send it to me, we will get it in front of Lee on the show. And Lee, do you have any final thoughts for teachers?
Don't underestimate the influence you have on these kids. Let me tell you, if the parents are not doing their job, which a lot of parents are not, they're the ones that should be teaching them. I get so upset when I hear parents saying the teachers are the problem with their children. No, the parents are the problem. The teachers are not the problem. And I just don't underestimate the influence you have. You may be the second line of defense. When the parents mess up, the teacher has gigantic influence. So I would say a young lady called me the other day after my anxiety podcast, and she told me that she dropped out of school in 3rd grade because she had separation anxiety. She couldn't be away from her mother. Couldn't. Absolutely at all. She didn't go back to school till she was in 9th grade. And the reason she graduated and was a homecoming queen and learned, she said she didn't even know how to multiply when she was in 9th grade. She had so much anxiety. And a teacher took her by the hand and for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade worked with her personally. And she graduated and went on to college. And boy, there's a story, you know? There's a story. And I just think the impact of a teacher. And by the way, even in business, people should start being teachers and quit being these big, bad, mean bosses. That's my final words today.
All right. Well, I mentioned there was one teacher that had a profound impact on me, so I want to mention her, Mrs. Jill Warren from Limestone High School, Bartonville, Illinois. Changed the course of everything that I did. So thank you, Mrs. Warren. And thank you, Lee, for a great episode. And thank you for listening to Creating Disney Magic. Now you can go out and create magic in your organization.